Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I picked up the Harbor Freight Titanium 140 welder. I really didn't have any plans to buy a welder at this point and get into welding, and I don't know how far I'm going to get with welding here on the channel, but there are a few things that I do want to learn to weld up and just take care of on my own, because a friend of mine gave me a muffler for this car. It was actually an HKS muffler, and I was going to get it repaired, and I sent it off to a guy to repair it, and I guess he was super busy and he had it for 2 or 3 months, and I finally just said, hey man, can I just get that muffler back? And I figured I would just go ahead and take care of it myself. It's going to need some sheet metal cut out on the actual muffler canister itself and welded back in, and I think this welder will probably do the job. And I've also got a couple things on this car, this rebuild project, that I've got to weld up. One of those things being the seat bolt nuts that are welded inside of the seat pan down here in the chassis of the car. Those are kind of broken out just a little bit, not a whole lot. They're still intact, but for safety I want to make sure these seats are bolted in. Not this particular seat, but the seats I'm going to use are bolted in. I think that's a common problem on these cars. These things break out, and my car over here with a B16 actually has one of those that's messed up as well, so I may do that in the future. I don't have any welding experience other than working for my brother a little bit, and I've used a MIG welder maybe 2 or 3 times. It's very minor project stuff over there. I would say I've got maybe 10-15 minutes of welding experience, so really nothing to even say I have any experience with. So this is going to be all learning for me, and hopefully it'll be learning for you as well, or maybe you guys are a lot more experienced welders that you can leave some comments down below and give me some advice. I went ahead and opted to get an argon CO2 shield gas bottle. That way I don't have to use flux core wire and deal with all that slag and clean up with the flux core. I'm hoping that this will allow me to get cleaner welds and just do a better job starting out learning. So I do have this small bottle just to make it easier to move around the garage. Alright, well here is the HKS muffler I was talking about with the dual tips. I love the look of this and the sound of it. It's a very quiet exhaust setup, but as you can see, it's got years of use and some rust on it. What I'm going to attempt to do is patch in some new metal here, get rid of this rust, and on the other side you can see there's rusty areas as well that need to be cut out and patched in. So this would be a good little project for me. If it turns out, great, we'll use it. If it doesn't turn out, well, it's not a big loss. This thing is in pretty rough shape as far as the can. I think if we were able to get it patched, it will turn out. I'll be able to refinish it, repaint it, and get this thing looking nice, and it's going to sound good on this car. But if it doesn't turn out, I'll just have to get another exhaust for the car. No big deal. Alright, the main reason I went ahead and bought the welding setup is because I'm going to have to patch in a new section of metal here. There are some dark rusty areas like we saw in the last video, and so I went ahead and bought a replacement panel here from a guy named Jeremiah Freeman. He cut this out of a parts CRX he had and sent it to me. So this should weld in here nicely. It should fit in there just perfectly as long as I get the cuts right. So this is going to be a pretty good challenge for me because I've never done anything like this. I think it's something that I can learn to do, and we can manage to get this thing in there. We'll find out once we get started on it. But the first thing I'm going to attempt to do in today's video is weld up those seat nuts in here, because that's going to be an easy hidden thing that it really is going to be forgiving if I mess up. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over here to this welder and actually run some practice beads and see how this thing does, and see if I can get the settings right, and then we're going to jump in here and get these things fixed. Alright, well, I'm definitely a novice, and I ran into two problems immediately as I started. I had it set to what it recommended. I think the wire speed was supposed to be 90, the voltage was supposed to be about 14, and then this was supposed to be about, the inductance was supposed to be about 3. I set it up exactly like that. I pulled the trigger. As soon as the wire hit the metal, it popped, and then it broke the arc and it wouldn't continue. So I turned up the wire speed a little bit, and that did seem to help, and I was able to continue the arc. But I was blowing through because whenever I let off of the trigger, the wire was continuing to feed out. It was almost like a delay, and I would have to pull the handle back away from the metal, and that's really just because of my ignorance. There's a setting here, there's a 2T and a 4T. I had to do a little bit of reading because I kept messing the metal up, and evidently it's just a setting on your trigger handle, and it was set on 4T. I didn't know any better, so I've been dealing with that for the past 30 minutes. I went ahead and ground down the panels here. They're welded together. I may end up cutting them apart, but I think what I'm going to do is just put it on 2T, get the settings back to where they were, where the wire speed is a little faster than the recommended, and then just try my hand at that and see if I can just lay some tacks down without blowing through and things like that. So I'm going to jump into that now and try it one more time. Hopefully this will work. And give me a little more confidence, because I'm really not feeling real confident to use this on the car yet, and it's going to take some practice to get a feel for it. So this is the area where I was actually trying to fill in where I blew through. It's got a big old giant glob in these areas up here as well. I was just kind of playing around, seeing how I would actually fill in a blow through, and it's definitely not easy, and it is messy. So that's a lot of material that I would have to grind off there if that were to happen. Now these down here are the actual tack welds that I was actually trying to do. This is what I'm going to need to do on the quarter panel back there. It's just these small tacks here, and actually, now that I've got the trigger set up properly, it's actually turning out fairly decent. These look pretty good here. That's exactly what I'm looking for, is just a small tack, just something to fill the gap and hold that together. Looks like I can grind those down pretty easily. So I'll probably do some more practice runs here before I actually move to the car, even those seat bolts, because I'm still not feeling real confident in myself just yet. I don't want to blow through the seat bolts and then have to build it all up and then deal with this, something like this right here. So I'm going to cut this out and do some cleanup here and then try some more practice. Alright, well, I can say I did get a little bit better as I welded a little bit more after that practice on the sheet metal. This was a little bit thicker in here. There was actually a nut on the underside of this sheet metal, so it's a little bit easier. I did go ahead and jump in here and do these. It wasn't too bad. This one isn't as pretty, but it's definitely going to hold. I went ahead and welded all the way around it, and as well as one of the cracks that was coming around the cup of this. This one here didn't have any cracks around the cup, but it was just broken all around the nut. So it's all welded up. I went ahead and threw some etching primer on there. I'm going to wait to paint that because I've got a lot of cleanup to do inside of here, and then I'm going to throw a coat of paint on this right here as well to protect it. But I'm happy with the purchase so far. I know I'm a noob basically when it comes to this, but I'm learning, and it's definitely going to come in handy for this panel over here. I'm going to go ahead and practice some more before I even attempt this, because I really don't want to jump in here and warp this whole panel up just because I'm wanting to get ahead of myself. So I'm going to go ahead and probably wrap up the video here. I may try to weld up this muffler in the near future. I've got to get some sheet metal though, because I don't really have any spare sheet metal other than what I cut off of that section that I was practicing on. So that'll be the next thing I do most likely. Just play around with that, see if I can get it usable. No big deal if I can't, like I said earlier. But the welder is definitely going to help me out a ton as far as like what I can do in here. There's some things that I need to do, like make custom brackets sometimes for different things, or just fix like bumper supports that have tabs broken off of them. I've never been able to fix that stuff other than just using some like epoxy. So this welder is really going to help out around the shop. I hope you enjoyed today's video. It was didn't really make a lot of progress, but sometimes you got to spend some time learning and buying new equipment and getting the stuff set up to actually use it and improve in the future. But enough of me talking, and we'll see you in the next video.